of workers of iniquity. Let them talk, keep them talking. We're gonna keep them talking, talking, they're talking. We've got a lot more coming, talking, they're talking. Oh yes, I know. We're gonna keep them talking, talking, they're talking. We've got a lot more coming. Let them say what they wanna say. What they do or say can lead I astray. No, 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 no. Jah is I guide day by day. Oh, we love, and He's my help in every way. That's why I'm singing, talking them talking. We're gonna keep them talking, talking they're talking. We've got a lot more coming, talking them talking. Oh yes, I know. We're gonna keep them talking, talking they're talking. Yes, we've got a lot more coming. Let them pass all their dirty remarks. If they were dogs, then they would bark. Children don't know them corners soon dark. Just like an old chap, Jah is gonna put them to park. Let them talk, keep them talking. We're gonna keep them talking, talking, they're talking. We've got a lot more coming, talking, them talking. Oh yes, I know. We're gonna keep them talking, talking, they're talking. Yes. We've got a lot more coming. Yeah. Bubble me a bubble now. Bubble me a bubble now.
Polish your son. Son.
Yeah, this is.
Look at dream, look at dream.
So this is the area. This is a bridge. We're on a bridge. And the bridge, as the gentleman was just saying to us, just showing the way. The bridge, as the gentleman was just saying to us, this is, we said this, yesterday when we spoke about the clearing and cleaning of the outfalls, the regional chairman gave to the Prime Minister everything that we are seeing here. Nothing needed to be negotiated because everything was delivered to be done almost 2 weeks ago. Before 2 weeks ago, the 10th, that the letter was sent to the Prime Minister, and I am doing this now because none of you are out here right now. It's dark, it's wet, and people are suffering. So I can do this right now. I can do just what I'm doing right now. I can say exactly what happened. You know why? Because Saturday night while on a program, persons try to ascribe credit, persons try to give blame and responsibility and make it look as though because we were absent from a meeting, we made the weather came down. No. We said that this thing should be done within the statutory arrangement. This is an emergency work. This is a crisis. And any crisis should be given the type of attention that allow people to be able to be getting the response that they deserve. The crisis. This is not a negotiation. The government should have been up here almost immediately 2 months ago, responding to this crisis. This is not a gaffe. You're looking right now in this water. I mean, we don't have light, but every drain you can see is flooded. Every drain. And we were told yesterday that works would have started to clear out fast. God is good that we have low tide. God is good that we have low tide. So imagine we have a low tide and we still have flooding in the alleys and the valleys. That's because the outfalls them should have been cleared 2 months ago as we'd asked. And for those who had gotten a commitment, it should have been cleared yesterday, Monday. There is no clearing yesterday, there is no clearing today, Tuesday, and I can assure you there is no plans for clearing on Wednesday. So God forbid again, there is no plan of how this work is going to be executed. And in the absence of a plan, we have flooding. But you know what? Tonight everybody home. So you see, tonight somebody asked me to go Victory Valley. I got counselors in Retrieve. When we finish here, we have to go up to Blueberry Hill because we got persons whose house fall down because of erosion. When we finish here, we got to go into Kansas City. We are doing this every time it rains for less than an hour. Every time the councillors would have to do this. And no need to do this. Here why no need to do this. Because we said to the government, and even repeated to them on the 10th by the regional chairman's letter, where and what they need to do. They have not done that. Instead, we had a negotiation. And out of the negotiation, no culpability, no responsibility. So that something like this happens, think about it. They were assured cleaning would have been done yesterday. Now this happens today. And we are seeing all of these canals that are clogged. This is negligence. Now who's responsible? For those who went down and negotiate, they've taken away that right of compensation off the table. Because as the Prime Minister said, act of God is what could make compensation happen.
Welcome to another edition of Voice of the Diaspora. In studio with me today is Apostle Nigel London, a community leader, a Lindener, a leader that is respected and recognized at Linden, a leader that is no nonsense, a leader that is outspoken. Flooding at Linden, it is happening. It is happening, and the community is severely affected. And the people are feeling the pressure as a result of what many call an act of God. A godly man is joining me now to talk about the flooding at Linden and the pressure and the situation that people face with no relief, with no help coming from the government, and questionable as it relates to how the local leaders are acting and dealing with this issue. Apostle Nigel London joins me now in studio. Apostle Nigel London, welcome to Voice of the Diaspora. You're here with us live. You're no stranger to this program. You're no stranger to this program. So many people have tuned in already. I recall so many interviews with you, and they've always been productive, fruitful, informative, and educational. My respect for you as a leader, not only at Linden, but as a national leader, has grown over time, and it continues to grow. I want to personally welcome you to this segment of Voice of the Diaspora. How are you feeling? What have you been up to lately?
Greetings to you, my brother, and thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be able to join you on such a critical platform. I must say that I commend the steadfastness with which you uphold and demonstrate your love for Guyana. To those who are viewing, I'd say to you all, hello, and thank you for having me here. It is well. In light of the circumstances, that's my mantra. It is always well. The worst never happens to saints of Yahweh. So for me, it is always well. There are things that upset me. There are things that I despise in reference to what's happening in our community, in our country. But it's still well in reference to my internal structure, my internal state.
And you look well externally too. You look well. That persona of a leader is there, healthy, young. You look better than I do. Apostle, yeah. Apostle, and so, I welcome you again to the program. and let us go into our discourse. But before we go into the situation, which is the flooding at Linden, before we discuss in depth the flooding at Linden and what is happening at Linden, as a religious leader and a national leader, you are recognized, of course, as a national leader. I wanted to have your view on a national situation involving the state and religion and what is happening in Guyana today. Have we descended into a police state? And so let us go to this.
Yes, so this is Brother Rondell and his father. And they're coming out to Mabroma police station here now. He was put on bail. How much money were you put on bail, Brother Rondell? $20,000 bail. And what was the reason for you to be put on bail?
Court.
He had to go to court for what?
Playing music.
Playing music in church. For playing keyboard. Brother Rondell, can you please come? What did the officer say to you?
I have to go to court because of playing music for church and giving God the praise and thanks.
Yes, sir.
And that's why they said that I get charged and I have to go to court for that.
All right.
Because of doing the gospel.
Amen.
The 18th of November, I have to go to
A young man at Mabaruma in church playing his music, worshiping, there's fellowship, and the police would have gone into that church and arrested him. He was escorted to the police station by his pastor. He was charged, placed on bail, and has to appear in court soon. Apostle Nigel London, you have a religious background and you are a community activist. It means that as a religious leader, you have been very outspoken nationally. You are recognizing Guyana perhaps as one of the most outspoken leaders, religious leaders in that country. And when you hear and would have seen what transpired there with a young man who is fellowship in church, who is actually engaged in fellowship in church, and the police would have entered that place of worship, a sacred place as many would see it. What are your views, Apostle? Are we descending into a police state?
Thank you for asking. We're not descending into police state. Guyana has been a police state for quite a while. Ever since the police came under, for the greater part, the leadership of henchmen of the PPP, of lackeys of the PPP, of puppets of the People's Progressive Party, we descended into police state. When the police can, for example, say to me that I don't have the right to stand in front of the office of the Director of Public Prosecution, a state-owned facility which is owned by the people. State isn't government, state is people-owned. It is owned by the people. And I couldn't stand in a public road in front of Ali Hak's office. That essentially highlighted to everyone that you are in a police state. When people are not allowed to simply gather in protest peacefully without being interfered with by many law enforcement officers, you are in a police state. When people are not allowed to go and stand in front of certain offices, like GCOM, without there being barricades and crowded calling, probably to save people here, and they prevent people from standing there, that's a sign of being a police state. So this is just a manifestation of an intensification of that entire reality. The police, for the greater part, are afraid to do that which is lawful. And I would like the viewers, as you rightly said, my whole psyche is about educating and re-educating Guyanese. That's what it's about, because some people need to be re-educated. Some have been misinformed for the greater part. The Guyana Police Force, the name itself I have an issue with, because the word force in itself doesn't lend to there being a perception of service or or protection of me in any way. It's you just have to have your way with me when it comes to what they want to do of guiding these people. Now, this situation, Norman, is beyond disgusting because, for one, the people are not in what you call an open air environment where you have to ask police permission because you may disturb the neighbors. What I understand, the backdrop to this would have been somebody called the police to say that the church is making noise. Now, tell me something. When you have people on the road at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, carrying on with their lawless, decadent behavior, I don't see the police very often going to stop certain parties. But in this case, people are in a facility called a church, and they were singing. They were arrested. Now the young man said the police arrested him for playing the key, but that's not the truth. And I mean, it's just it would be fun being a noise nuisance. But look at what they're calling a nuisance. That is what's a trouble to trouble individuals. We're singing what people may call gospel songs or religious songs is now a nuisance. This is becoming very interesting. And what I must say to you and to all who are viewing here, beyond what the police did, that's one thing. But what the church has done, that's my issue. What they call the church, those who gather and those who say they have faith in Jesus and all this, what have you done? I am yet to see even 10 or 5 people on the road protesting in Georgetown in front of the Ministry of Social Cohesion, for example, to say, how could you, in front of the Ethnic Relations Commission, to say, how could you allow this to happen? Where an individual or 2 individuals are arrested in a building that's not owned by the state, and they're arrested while engaged in religious worship. So I hope somebody could call the police when they're beating Tacit drum in a temple then. Maybe that should happen too. This is absolutely ridiculous and insane. And to know, I say again, what the police did is one thing, but what the church or what is called the religious community is not doing is a great concern to me because they are afraid to speak.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, sir.
Thank you. They're afraid to talk. Now, let me put this out to all of you out here. The churches in Guyana, what you call churches here in this country, have been severely compromised. And please, viewers, this may not be the view of Mr. Brown, so hold this against me, not him. I'm an invited guest, and I appreciate the fact he allows me to say exactly what I want to say without my being censored in any way, because I would not speak as a crazy man. But the fact of the matter is, when the head of an institution like the organization like the Seventh-day Adventists, the Clerk fellow, could have said, the president of the Adventist conference said that Irfan Ali is a man of great distinction. When he said that at the forum where they had the 24-hour prayer service that time, I said, this is the limit. This is the epitome. This is the zenith of ungodliness in the church. For you to look at Irfan Ali and say he's a man of distinction, what yardstick did that Adventist leader use to measure Irfan Ali's conduct? That's what I want to know. Because from that, you see why the police could do what they've done here. The church isn't speaking against the ills, the obvious and glaring atrocities, the racist discriminations we're seeing here. They're not saying anything. So in this situation, the PPP and the police have recognized that if the church has already been neutralized, then it's time to move in and do what we want. That's what you're seeing here.
Apostle Nigel London here on Voice of the Diaspora. I intervened there for a second and allowed you to speak because I was going to say that you preempted my next question. And you answered it perfectly. You have latitude on this program to say what you want to say. This is a revolutionary place. This is a place in life, in reality, that you have a voice to speak. This is Guyana's reality. And I will not mistake this platform for anything else than real, open, clear, transparent, and outspoken. And so you answered the question, but I still have to ask it as the host.
Please, I'd love to hear it.
Apostle, you see that what I term as an atrocity, and I want to clarify that your view is the view of this platform within this context. that you have spoken. And I want to make it very, very clear. This platform identifies with that view that you have pro-offered there. Pastor Lee, Pastor Selwyn Sills, pastors across Guyana, many pastors who would have come up against you have watched your struggle. Many Christian pastors who would have come up against you, and you would have stood up valiantly and defended your corner and your convictions. They're silent today. They're silent today. Why the silence? Is it that concessions are given by the government? Is it time, Apostle Nigel London, that religious leaders, Christian leaders in particular, because hear this, the police would not do that to Hindu leaders.
No.
They would not do that to Muslim leaders.
Wouldn't try.
In Guyana, they wouldn't do it. We understand that within Christianity in Guyana, predominantly African Guyanese are part, predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly, they are part of that religious persuasion. It bothers me that in the face of a situation of the nature of what transpired with that young man in Mabaruma, I think, that the leaders across the country, the religious Christian leaders across the country, have been uncomfortably silent. Your take?
Well, they are unexpectedly silent and unsurprisingly silent because they can't talk. Let me inform all and sundry that in reference to the demographics of Guyana, religious demographics, the Christians make up 55%. Please take note of that. Not 25, not 35. 55% of the religious convictions in this country are said to be Christian. And look at who the police will attack first. Christian. Because although they are 55% in terms of the demographics, they are about the weakest bunch in terms of responses to ills and wrongdoing in our society. So there are many names, there are many heads of various organizations. They're what you call the ministers, the Christian Ministers Fellowship or Ministers Christian Fellowship. You've got the Georgetown Ministers Fellowship. You've got central bodies, because all of the Christian groupings, their central bodies are located in the city. And in that city, there's yet to be, as far as I'm aware, as I said, 5, not 500, 5 men going to the street to say that this is unacceptable. How could you launch an attack against the church in the church? That's the police didn't go to the front and as they would normally do and say, Pastor, please come outside. I want to have a word with you. No, the young man went into the church and stood in front of the church. It goes to show how weak and how weakened so many of our religious leaders have become. Now, the silence, Norman, has a lot to do with, as far as I'm convicted by now, in some cases, the handouts that these people receive, and secondly, the fear under which they function, because they know that certain benefits would not be had and will not accrue to them if they only take the risk of speaking against the PPP. They know that. They're aware of it. And additionally, let's not forget that these men and women love money. And the scripture records, it's not a religious broadcast, but I can't help but tell people this. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Money isn't the root of evil, the love of it. And when you love money, you cannot speak against those who have it. And that's what you're seeing here right here. They love money. They love it so much that they lie to people and tell people, for example, the tithe is money when tithe actually is food. And that's a different discussion altogether. But they will take money from people. So if they see a group of individuals who are excessively wealthy, they will not speak against them. Because in their minds, the blessing lies in their silence. And it's just quite unfortunate. They speak against me, no problem. But those who they say they think have money to give them, they have nothing to say. And I can promise all of Guyana this. I put my life on the line right now. If I were to become president of Guyana tomorrow, these same men who see talk against me will come and shake my hands. How are you, sir, Mr. President? Oh, good, because they see an opportunity to gain something. That's how weak they are. And if you were not what you are, I say the other part on this program, and I won't do that today.
As it
I'll save you.
relates to
I'll
the
save you ears.
pastors, as it relates to the pastors across Guyana, are you saying that the fear of God is trumped by the fear of leaders in the PPP because of money and because of fear itself?
You take me there, Norman. Viewers, please blame Mr. Brown for this.
No,
Listen to me.
seriously.
No, I'll say what I have to say because I just love the fact that it's a revolutionary program. You're not afraid to have controversies born on this platform. And I don't have an issue with disagreeing with anybody. But let me share this with you. I will ask a question and the ERC could come and ask me anything because I'll do a broadcast about them based on what they've done to me personally. I'm amazed to know that Christians in Guyana fear Hindus, while Christian leaders say that their God is the only true living God. I can't wrap my mind around that. I cannot wrap my mind around that. This is not being divisive, it's being factual. If you are Christian and you say that your God is above all other gods, and your God is so powerful, how are you afraid of a person who serves a God is false? I don't understand that. Because the PPP is predominantly Hindu. It's the first time in the history that they're led by a Muslim, and that in itself is a problem in the PPP. There's a big problem because Hindus do not like being led by Muslims. It goes all the way to India. Pakistan have the issue. But we recognize in Guyana that those who say, again, the 55% of our population, the majority of religious people in this country are called Christians, but yet their leaders are afraid of Hindus. I can't understand that. So they have no fear of God, if you ask me. They have fear of men who have money.
Apostle Nigel London here on Voice of the Diaspora. And before we move to the main topic and the main subject, I want to press you for a brief comment. What would you like to say to Pastor Lee? What would you like to say to Pastor Selwyn Sills? What would you like to say to the pastors of Linden and across Guyana? Is it too late for them to speak out? What would be your call, Apostle Nigel London?
My call to them would be to have just an iota of courage. And even if you're afraid, just behave as if you're
Are you saying they're lacking it?
They do. That's why I'm asking to have a little bit of it. Just a little bit, a modicum of it. And let people believe. I know you're scared, but just give the impression that you are fearless and that this God you talk about is able to protect you. Because if you don't do that, then those in your congregations would look to you and realize that they can see through you, that you're just a puff of smoke. You're just dancing around as a weed with no structure, with no backbone. So if I want to be manly as I am, I'll tell you, have chutzpah.
Apostle Nigel London here. We are moving now into the main program. He is a Lindener and he's aware of what is happening in the community across Linden. Of course, he is a leader that is not partisan. He's not involved in partisan politics. He's not committed to any political party or anything. And so it is important to have his view on what is transpiring at Linden in relation to the flooding. And we are going to go there now after this short break.
Which rain?
And the back there from the kids, them house go back down, son. Yeah. The worst is look who going in the house. The inside the front house gun flood all like this, they're like this. But we don't get off this before we push out the...
Which drain?
This is what people I tell show back you again. The back there, the drain.
Apostle Nigel London, Linden flooding. I want you to give a backdrop before we get into the serious discourse and for you to give your view and assessment of what is happening at Linden as a result of the flooding, the political perspective, government's response, or local leaders' response, and so on. Give, for the sake of the viewers, a backdrop. You are there, you're on the ground, you are experiencing what is happening at Linden. Tell us, give us a backdrop on the flooding, the
Sure.
rains, and so on. And we'll take it from there.
Thank you. It's just a sad situation, but it's an expected reality. And I want to give a backdrop based on an informal conversation I had with Akani Blair, a non-PPP supporter. And I want to say, because he's the foreman for the Bamia Primary School that's yet to be completed. Maybe it's over a year now, just about. Behind schedule or approaching that. But I was talking to him informally, and he said to me that Linden doesn't need drains. Like Amazewell and stuff, you don't need drains there because it's sand. And I said, you the individual who would be having oversight to some extent of $300+ million in reference to Bamia Primary School, and something as simple as drainage for roadways, you don't understand? And I say that to give the backdrop politically of how the PPP cronies process. They don't have a care about Linden. What they care about is what money can be made through projects, as they call them in Linden. And so for quite a while, I've been, and others, we've been highlighting, addressing, issuing clarion calls that there's a problem in Linden. There's a problem in Mackenzie, a problem in Wisma. Because it's Wisma to some extent, some parts of Wisma and Mackenzie, it's a basin. And so water will always run towards that basin. And many persons, I understand, and people may say, let me just get here, that why does everything have to be political? Because everything is political. In reference to how you function. You saw with the police and the church, that's political. Because the police is an arm of the state. And look at what's happening. So drainage and irrigation and the likes fall under the authority of the administration of government.
Yes.
And so it has to be political when these issues arise. Linden is, in geographically speaking, the hilly sand and clay belt region. Hilly sand and clay. So some parts of our community has clay, region 10, some parts have sand. What bothers me is that those who are supposed to be gurus and have all these multi-million-dollar contracts don't understand that sand moves with water. That's called erosion. And when it moves with water, it will stop at some point. That's called deposition. It takes someone of colossal stupidity to not understand that if you build a roadway or you have any structure where there's a hill and it rains, the sand will move. That's called erosion. And the sand will stop or accumulate at some point. That's called deposition. And when there's deposition, there's going to be blockage of some sort. Now, that has begun to happen. Norman, for the first time in my life, last night and a few nights ago, last week, Friday, I think it would have been, the Watuka Road, Costarina Drive, the main road passed through Watuka, goes to GRA by the hospital, was flooded. For the first time I'm 50 years old. We've lived in phases, I've been around phases for 46 or 47 years, 48 years just about. It has never been flooded, the Costarina Drive area. Now it's flooding because there's a tunnel when you to transition from Watuka to Phaseras that's about 10 or more feet deep in some areas, and that is flooded. I want people to understand. You know what happened? Because when the flood occurred in Nikadat, I was live among others. I did broadcast, show the whole world. Like the people like to show the world things. I showed the whole world. Look at the nonsense these people are doing, where they have got drains that are clogged, they've got canals that are clogged in a low-lying area. They don't care. So what they did, they rushed and gave their friends with excavators, oh, do that. Millions of dollars. Just dig holes, and then somebody shows up who apparently is not an engineer, indeed, to put little tubes in wide areas. And some brilliant person in Linden believes that works. Citizens of Guyana, residents of Linden, may I help you please? If you have wide bodies of water moving and you want to bring it into a narrow channel, the water will rise because it cannot flow as fast as possible. This is basic engineering. So that's the backdrop where people with no brain apparently have been saddled with political responsibilities to solve a flooding issue in this community. The fact that Linden has begun to flood so quickly, it means we've got an issue with the movement of water. And at some point, the water isn't going to move as freely as it should. So it swells. And that's what gives rise to flooding. It's that simple. In other instances, alleyways and gullies are blocked. In other cases, the people want to just spend money so that they can say, okay, say we're doing something for Linden here. And they give people contracts. That's a big one in Guyana now. And when they got the contracts, they build roads and build alleyways and tracks. And in some cases, just cut off the flow, the channels for water to flow. That's the reality of what we're dealing with now. And it's bad.
Apostle,
Before you speak now, one second,
ahead,
before you
sorry,
speak,
go ahead.
another thing they did. Sorry, another thing they did.
Go ahead.
In some cases, my brother, I don't know if you're into construction, but you have common sense. In some cases, they have the town is here, the river is out here. They have the drain below the outflow to the river. So water is flowing back into Mackenzie, back into certain parts of Silvertown, because the drain isn't set to run down to the river. They give somebody a contract yet again, and the contractor set the drain below the outflow point. So water is just flowing back into the community. That's the kind of stupidity we have to deal with. And people wait until it happens. They wait until it happens before some leaders say, stop this work. You're not doing it here. That's what I'm waiting to see. And I know we'll dive deep into this discussion, but I have a lot to say about some leaders in Linden.
No,
they are not going to say, stop this now.
You have to. But the rains have come. And the currents are strong. And I understand, as many understand in the diaspora, that almost the entire of Linden is affected. Canvas City, Blue Burial. You said Linden is a hilly sand and clay area. We're talking about hill. Blue Burial is highlands. But the rains and the flood, those highland areas are now being affected because there is no proper irrigation. We're talking about an oil-rich country, Apostle, in which the wealth is staggering. The budget has been trillions and trillions of dollars. So we have Canvas City, Blueberry Hill, Silvertown, Victory Valley, Nike-Dock on Mackenzie Shore, Watuka. Almost the entire of Linden is affected. You are saying that those who are responsible, who are given contracts, don't have a clue to what the magnitude of the situation is and how to even deal with beginning to ensure that it is minimized. I want to ask you this. When the flooding happened, I am not sure in my research the direct dates over the past 2 weeks or a week, how many floodings we have had. But I'm aware, and it has been brought to Voice of the Diaspora, that the Prime Minister a few days ago, when the flooding happened, would have called an emergency meeting. And that emergency meeting excluded the mayor, it excluded the regional chairman, and other key leaders, local leaders in that community. We understand, this program understands, Apostle Nigel London, that the Member of Parliament, Jeremy Figueroa, perhaps was the only person from the side of the opposition that was invited to the meeting. The Prime Minister did not travel to Linden to hold that meeting there. He didn't put on a long boots and a raincoat and walk through the snake-infested waters with the people of Linden. He called a meeting in Georgetown. And he said, and I am not sure, you are on the ground, I heard from sources, the Prime Minister said it's an act of God and Linden needs no compensation. Linden will not be getting any compensation. I would like you to speak to us on that.
Thank you. And to say I'm disappointed in reference to what Member of Parliament Figueroa is doing would be an understatement. It would be putting it as mildly as possible, because it seems as if, and he's free to approach me anywhere he wants for us to address this matter, because he's paid by me. I don't pay. He doesn't pay me. I pay him as a taxpayer.
Precisely.
And to know he represents Region 10, whether I voted for them, it doesn't matter. You're still a representative. You're paid representative of Region 10. And as the highest ranked in terms of hierarchy, himself, Devin Sayers, we have the regional chairman, then down to Sharma and others, the mayor. To know that this individual can accept, if he did, such an invitation is an insult. And Aubrey Norton and Granger need to do something about this, because it's happening too often. It's an insult. Linden is a town in Guyana. The town has got what is called a municipality, or municipal leadership, I should say, a council. So you have a mayor and a town council. The mayor and the town council have got a local government responsibility for Linden. It is imperative, therefore, that if Linden has an issue in reference to natural disaster or this situation, then by all means, Mark Phillips, who's paid to be Prime Minister, is supposed to, if he wants to have engagements, come to the community, engage the mayor, engage the councillors, engage the regional chairman and those councillors, and show the community that he intends to respect the leadership therein. But if he says, come to Georgetown, I think last week, Friday, they had a meeting, come to the city, and we'll talk about the flooding in Linden, it is an insult to the leadership. And Figueroa is supposed to say to him, no, you come here, because we have a government in Linden called local government. And this local government body is vested with power by the Constitution. So you come here and talk to us. You come here and see what the issue is. But he would not do that. Because if he's encouraged through the presence of a member of parliament, if that's what Figueroa did, then that in itself is an insult to the mayor. And I would not go to Georgetown to see Mark Phillips talk about flood in Linden. Linden, you don't have to catch a plane to come to Linden. He didn't have to get a ferry to come to Linden. He can drive right here. And he should drive on the same highway to see how rough it is and how dangerous it is. And he should come at night when it's dark and a bush truck is on the road to see how dangerous it is. He should come in without police outriders to see what we have to go through. There seems to be little or none at all in reference to what's left of men of stature and caliber in our community. We have a group of chickens in this place. It is ridiculous. So there's no way that anybody from Linden is supposed to go to Georgetown to talk to Mark Phillips. And may I inform Mark Phillips that it doesn't take 20 minutes for Linden to flood. And I'm not exaggerating here. In 15 to 20 minutes of heavy rainfall, the water swells because the water is trapped on the ground. By GRA, where LECI is, I told these morons again, in the all day when you were at home, Norman, I said this corner by GRA area, what was called General Office side, has some big tunnels on the ground.
Yes.
These fellas dug it up and put some little 2 feet or 12-inch pipes. So the water just flows up on the road now. That's it. So Phillips needs to be here to see what's happening to the people in Linden. But when you have got leaders who apparently have got a personal interest and maybe some other interest,
their own agenda.
Okay, that is what you have that comes or obtains from that kind of environment.
But let me ask you quickly before we move on to the next question. In your estimation as a leader that is not partisan at Linden, your assessment of Jeremy Figueroa as a member of Parliament of Linden, why do you think he's behaving in that manner? Many people are saying here in the comment section that Mr. Figueroa is a sellout. Mr. Figueroa is pushing for a one Guyana, which is the PPP's mantra, outside of a one people, one nation, one destiny. Mr. Figueroa has alienated himself from the local leaders as a member of Parliament of Region 10. in which he should be connecting with the leaders of the local leaders of Linden and Region 10 to push one agenda to ensure that the government does what it ought to do for Linden as it does for other communities, including its strongholds across Guyana. I want to have your view on German Figueroa, and you are not partisan. Looking from the outside as a community leader, as a person who is very, very objective, what is your assessment within this paradigm of German Figueroa's leadership?
Before I speak to Figueroa's leadership, I must speak to, as I said, I didn't see him. I don't know what he was in the meeting. If you have photographs to show that, that's fine. I was actually dealing with my daughter's
Yes.
transition, so I didn't get a chance to see that. But if I wouldn't think that you just be facetious about that. But if you were in the meeting with Mark Phillips, and Mark Phillips were to say that this is an act of God, hence no compensation, it shows that Mark Phillips has no respect for Figueroa as a member of parliament. And as an he's a selected representative because he was never elected. Greatest selected him to go to parliament. So as a selected leader of this community, it shows that Mark Phillips has no respect for anybody's intelligence. Because if the drains are blocked, and drains is not an act of God, it's a dereliction of duty on the part of those who are supposed to be responsible for drainage and irrigation. But I don't fault Mark, because I don't credit him as being highly intelligent based on what he does with the PPP or what he says. He has intelligence beyond his political body. But when I look at
he's
Figueroa,
compromised. He's compromised.
that's what I said. So he cannot. Anybody who supports the PPP, and I will say this without reservation, anyone who supports the PPP cannot be highly intelligent in reference to what they speak. They can be intelligent internally, but they are not allowed to speak intelligently. And that's just
They're not allowed, and that's slavery.
Exactly so.
That's slavery.
So when I look at Figueroa's behavior, I begin to be concerned about whether he is supporting an agenda of the PPP. Because when Norton said he doesn't shake the hands of his oppressors, Figueroa shook Ali's hand. So I said to Norton, now hold on. I said to Norton that there's no one on the Linden, Forbes, Sampson, Burnham would have even thought about doing that. Not one of them. And if they tried it, after he said that I don't shake the hands of my oppressors, that person will never be seen again in reference to the
but
PNC.
You are absolutely correct, Apostle Nigel Eliakim, because it's not only one incident. It's a pattern.
That's the point I'm beginning to make here.
It's a pattern of which Mr. Figueroa is actually saying to his party that I don't agree with anything you're doing, and I will openly support the PPP under a One Guyana mantra, under a trust for development. We know that as the storm comes to debilitate Linden, that we are seeing the evidence of the PPP's ineptitude in terms of dealing with things the way they ought to deal with them, in terms of national development, in terms of taking care of a country. So here is where you're seeing Figueroa saying one thing, and the reality faces us, in which those things are exposed to contradict what Mr. Figueroa is saying. And go ahead. And I want to, because you are an independent leader, so you're not taking a political position. You're not PNC.
No.
And when you look from outside, and before we move on, and before you make your point, before answering this question, do you think it is time that the PNC decides that Mr. Figueroa, and Linden decides that Mr. Figueroa is not working in the best interest of his community and what he's mandated to do. But go ahead with
Well,
your point first before you answer.
thank you. They should have done that a long time ago, because I say again, under Linden, Forbes, Sampson, Burnham, if Burnham had said that he would not shake the hand of an oppressor, being a finale rare for this, there's nobody in PNC who would have tried to shake Ali's hand after that, because they know that Forbes Burnham would be intolerant of such conduct. Now, that is not being independent, an independent thinker in that context. It is having respect and regard for a decision that leadership makes, and to strengthen and reinforce the decision that your leader is making to say, listen, these people are oppressing us, and we're not going to show them any happy face. That's what the message would have been about. So from that day, Figueroa should have been marked and expelled, or put on the backseat to say, well, listen, you've insulted essentially the leader of the party's decision and his general authority, so you don't need to be here. But apart from that,
Apostle
even
Nigel
when,
London, before you
yeah,
go on, are you saying to this program, because we do brief clips for the world to hear from the entire program, are you saying to
sure,
this program, as an independent thinker, as a non-political partisan person at Linden, a leader, are you saying that it's time that Mr. Figueroa should be removed from his party?
100%. Mr. Figueroa, Jermaine Figueroa, should be removed from PNC forthwith, because he has demonstrated, if he sat in a meeting with Mark Phillips without Sharma being present, being the mayor, without Duran Adams being present in the Regional Democratic Council's chairman, he should not have been there. More so if he traveled to Georgetown, or was in Georgetown, to meet with Mark Phillips in Georgetown. He shouldn't be there. And if Bobby Norton states that he is aware of a member of parliament going to speak to Mark Phillips in Georgetown about flooding in Linden, then Norton needs to go too, because he has no respect for leadership in Linden. And Linden, in reference to percentage, votes overwhelmingly for the PNC, beyond any other district that in reference election.
Precisely.
Linden has the highest percentage of votes, more than Region 4. And if you would disrespect Linden, then Linden needs to send a strong message to them. But I hope Linden will begin to realize what's happening to you all, that this is not about the strength of leadership. For me, it has become opportunistic leadership, because I begin to ask myself certain questions. What is there for this member of parliament to gain from his conduct? And I want him to speak, because, again, I don't have anything personal with Jermaine. He's not a friend of mine. We're not brothers or but for me, this is a man talking to another man and a leader speaking to another leader. What is there to be gained for you to so consistently demonstrate, whether it is deliberately or coincidentally, demonstrate that you have a different view from that of your party? That's what I need to know when it comes to dealing with who your party describes as oppressors, as racists, as those who are seeking to undermine African descendants. What is it? People need to know.
People need to know. Apostle Nigel London here on the program, speaking out. I have not egged him on. I strongly believe that as an independent thinker, from his soul, he's giving an objective opinion, an assessment, and perhaps an advice to the People's National Congress. And he has said that Linden is primarily PNC. You can't run away from that, whether you are a part of the PNC or not. The reality is that Linden is PNC. And the thing is, Apostle, that the evidence is there that the PPP has no interest. You don't have to be a politician to grasp the fact that the PPP has no interest in PNC strongholds. That their interest lies in their friends, family, and cronies. Nobody has to be a part of a political party in Guyana to come to that realization. And so I'm happy that you would have made a pronouncement on the leadership as a Lindener, because you are paying him as a Lindener to be your member of parliament and to represent the party in which he serves and the people of the community. And I'm happy tonight that you have made your point in relation to Mr. German Figuera. You have not said he's a sellout. Loads of people in the comment section, they're saying that he's a sellout. You haven't said that. You have been very objective in saying that even Norton must understand that perhaps the time has come, because Burnham would not have allowed it. Burnham would not have allowed it. And therefore, Norton or any other leader in the PNC, within the context of what is happening. Mark Phillips, Apostle. Mark Phillips is a Lindener. He is a decorated military officer of the highest pedigree in Guyana. Outside of German Figuera, we see a Lindener in the face of natural disaster that would, at the behest, I believe, at the behest of Barajaglio, would say to Linden people, you have nothing to give, nothing to get in terms of relief because of that natural disaster. In the context of Figuera, how do you respond to Mark Phillips' utterance?
It is insulting. And it has to be that he's not permitted, as is the case when I'm surprised he had so much to say in the first place, because his only role, as far as I'm aware, in recent history, would be to respond to evidence of discrimination against African descendants. That's all he was with watered down, diluted to be. So whenever there's evidence put on the table to say, okay, here's the way they're treating Prodigy, for example, here's what they're doing reference to contracts being awarded to in East Indians as opposed to African descendants, look at the percentage. They say Mark Phillips, or if the UN says something that's very strong, or the US pays attention to say something is wrong here in reference to how Africans are being treated, Mark is called, apparently, and said, go say something. That's all his role has been for the longest, as far as I've seen it, in reference to his public utterances. So it's surprising that he would now be chosen, or he would be instructed, or whatever it is that happened to him. He would say this now, that there is no way that, according to what's reported, Lindeners will be compensated because it's an act of God. Again, I say, in reference to development, in reference to leadership, and that's why I speak to Figuera, there's something called good governance. I don't care whether you're from PNC, PVP, APNU, whatever. I believe in good governance, because good governance makes life easier for me and for my fellow Lindeners and Guyanese at large. I believe in good governance. And if the PP does what is good, then I speak to it because it's good governance. If the PNC or APNU AFC is doing what is good, then I speak to it because it's good governance. But in this case, if there's a group or an organization, an entity with responsibility for ensuring that the town's drainage and irrigation system works well, ensure the drains are clear, drains are constructed in certain areas so that we cannot have flooding, then if flooding occurs as a result of their negligence, there has to be compensation. There should be a class action lawsuit filed because it shows failure on the part of the administration to do that which they should. Mark Phillips doesn't understand what acts of God speak to. If there's an earthquake, it's called an act of God. If there's a hurricane, it's called an act of God. If there's flooding, it may be called an act of God. However, if there's supposed to be inspectors coming to inspect my home to ensure that my home has got a certain code, a standard to which it should be built, so it can withstand, let's say, magnitude 2, 2.3 earthquake, and magnitude 1 makes my house fall because the inspector failed to do his job, then I can sue the state to say, the inspector say, you failed to do your job. This again is simple reasoning that evades the likes of those who support the PPP, because you cannot support the PPP and make intelligent utterances. I am convinced about that. And I will not change.
You talked about Akani Blair earlier, and that is testimony to the fact. Apostle, we're moving on now. 1 hour into the program, precisely 1 hour 4 seconds into the program, as of now. Let us go to the Linden leaders, local leaders. We
Sure.
understand what the PPP is doing. We understand what they're doing. In fact, we expect that from the PPP. But in the context of the general politic, we expect a balanced response from our leaders, our local leaders. Because we have come to a point, Apostle, if you will agree with me, if you may agree with me, you can decide not to. We have come to a point that the aggressor is allowed to triumph because the victim is not fighting back. The aggressor is allowed to triumph because the victim is not fighting back. And therefore, the masses are left at the mercy of the aggressor, while the leaders stand there inept and effortless. When you, in your independent view, assess the leadership of the local leaders within the context of the flooding, do you think more can be done? Do you think that a different approach could have been had? In your view, as an independent Lindener who is a leader, that maybe this could happen, this should happen, this can happen. It is not too late yet. What is your take on the local leaders and their response to the flooding at Linden and the government's high-handedness in relation to saying, we don't care?
In my view, I would greatly commend certain key figures. I know that Duran Adams continues to highlight issues that face the region at large because he's the regional chairman. But the need for constitutional reform is even more urgent in reference to what would cause Duran to be more effective. Because there's one who's called Dwight John, who's here, and he's called the regional executive officer. And I cannot understand how Guyana's constitution has been framed to allow someone of lesser rank to have greater weight in reference to what happens to this, in reference to decision making and expenditures of funds in our community. It is absolutely insane. The executive officer in Dwight John is supposed to, by law, adhere to the instructions of the council, which would be the Regional Democratic Council. He does not do so. And I've heard threats after threats after threat to take him to court, and that's where I would have to fault the councillors. He should be kicked out of the office, put out of the building, locked out of the gate, and no police can come. And Linden is supposed to gather around him, the town council and everybody else, and say, listen, you are not going to come here and override the decisions made by the council or ignore decisions made by the council and think you get off. Get out of this building. That's what Lindeners should do after they see the leaders taking a stance. Norton should be in Linden. Figueroa should be here. He is. Devonshire should be here. The parliamentarians should be here because we vote in Linden, not me and Memphis people, overwhelmingly for the PNC. So y'all should be here to say to Dwight John, get it right or get out. But they don't do that either. They don't do that. So in reference to his speaking or highlighting the issues, we can give Duran, for example, an A plus, because he does that. He's consistently highlighting what the issues are. But the councillors are not active.
But is that enough, Apostle? And we're going to have a little cross talk here, because I'm going to say this to you, and I mean it. I literally mean it. We have a constitution, we have rules, we have regulations, and those regulations, in theory, is to make things right for communities. It's to outline what needs to be done and how it should be done. But the end of it all, the being end of it all, is to ensure that the community benefits positively. Understand that. Now, we are not in a normal situation. We are in a situation that is abnormal. And if the situation is abnormal, then our response cannot be normal. to an
Correct.
abnormal situation. Understand this. And I want to engage you now before I allow you to speak.
Sure.
Is it enough, Apostle
No.
Nigel Eliakim? Is it enough? Is it acceptable? Should it be lauded that in this critical situation and at this most critical juncture of disrespect and dismissal by the PPP government, that Darren Adams, the regional chairman, and Sharma Solomon, the mayor, can only highlight issues? We are seeing in an oil-rich country where Linden is a very, very important town in terms of swing votes, in terms of deciding in the democracy, how democracy works and governance would be had. We are seeing in Linden that the local leaders empowered by the Constitution can only pick up a phone without much data to point into the darkness of storms to show what the PPP is doing to them. Is that not to appease the people that they're doing something, and then the rot continues? The rot continues, and people wake up in homes that are flooding with snakes and insects and all that kinds of stuff that are there with them, and their life is threatened. Their safety is threatened by that. Here is my question to you. Is it enough, Apostle Nigel Eliakim, for in a situation that is considered abnormal, that local leaders can just say, we are telling you what is happening? Have we reached the point in which the question should be asked?
Well, I must say to you, Norman, that it is not enough. I was saying that on a scale of 100, 0 to 100, in reference to highlighting what is happening, 100%. They do that. On a scale of the response that's expected, and more than anything else, most effective, they may be at 20%, because there is not a response that states, for example, for me, if a leader tells me that Linden is strategically positioned, Region 10 is strategically positioned in reference to the economic fiber of this country. Goods and services, in reference to timber, for example, must pass through Region 10. Gold and diamond, unless they fly, in many instances, pass through Region 10, or the services, the fuel and so on will have to go through Region 10. If you tell me that, then I would expect you to be militant enough to understand the importance of this community and how certain decisions can be made to make people respect us. And that's what I'm saying to these people all the time. When would the leaders of this community say, okay, if the PPP wants to show us that they're unprepared to respect and value who we are, then we're going to make them understand the value we have in this community and in this country. You don't see that, because somebody may be afraid of what will happen to them if they take that stance. Somebody may be afraid of what will happen to the people. But I'm saying, simply put, you can, in reference to the executive officer in Dwight John, who doesn't want to follow the instructions of the council, put him out the building, lock the gate. You don't need any bridge here.
More than Dwight John, we have Lennox Gaspar.
Well, we get into him in a minute.
Okay,
we get into him as well.
Go ahead.
Right? We get into him as well. Let's deal with the regional council first.
Yes.
Put out the executive officer who doesn't want to listen to you. Put him out. And the people like me would be on the ground immediately to say, now I can stand with you because you mean business right here.
Yes.
I'm not standing with chickens and pussycats. When you want to be men, I'll stand with you as a man. In reference to the town council, today, again, I saw Edgel came to Linden because people's roofs were blown off last time. No people know that. Trees fell on people's homes because of erosion. So Mark Phillips Council is an act of God. The roads are built. There's no drain beside the road, so water runs off the side and just erodes the place, and trees fell on people's homes, destroy people's houses. So Edgel ran up today. Gaspar was with Edgel, and guess what, Norman? So was Figuera. The mayor wasn't there.
Wow.
I didn't see Deron John Adams there. I saw Figuera, and I saw Figuera leading Gasper and Edris say, oh, we go here next, we go there next. And Gasper telling him in a nice way, Figgy, where we go? Not Figuera, no, Figgy. Not Mr. MP. Figgy, where we going next? And he said, we're going block 22. And Gasper is streaming live. Now you have got somebody who was put in the town council as a town clerk. The law of Guyana is clear that there's a certain protocol to be followed before town clerk can be employed.
Yes.
Gasper didn't follow, again, goes to that protocol. When there was a protest, the people simply say, okay, then there has to be applications filed. While he's in the office, as far as I'm aware, he is supposed to receive applications for his position. Now, how much more stupid can people be? He's in the office and he should be receiving applications and sending them to Georgetown, to local government commission, ministry, to know these are the people, to say these are the people who applied for my position. And when it does settle, only one person applied, and that's Gasper. I asked the councillors in Linden, did you ever have an interview with Gasper before he was employed?
No. They didn't. No, they didn't.
Did you ever? I said, did you ever have a say? No. How then can he come into this chamber and tell you, but he's taking minutes?
Because Barjak, you place him there, Apostle. And
I don't care who placed him. No,
and I agree with you 100%. Go ahead, talk.
I don't care who placed. Thank you. I don't care who placed him there. But I want to know, how could Lindeners have him in there?
Good.
How could councillors have him in there?
Apostle, that's the point. That's the point. And that's the salient point that we have to examine in relation to the leadership that is existing at Linden. We know that Barjak during the PPP use partisan politics to ensure they achieve their objective. Apostle, bear with me for a second. We know that. We are aware that the PPP's onslaught to debilitate the opposition and local leaders is to use persons in strategic positions that they place there to frustrate, for the want of a better term, to frustrate the efforts of the leaders who are mandated to see the smooth flowing of any community, society, or town. So this is no question anymore about what the PPP is doing. The question is what will be the reaction of the local leaders that are now facing a political dogma that will undermine them for the next 5 years. Now, Apostle, Lennox Gasper, it is known, is a PPP appointee who left the PNC because he was upset with the PNC. He's a religious leader, I understand. He was a firebrand PNC councillor, and he decided that the PNC was not doing him any justice, and he crossed over to the PPP. He denounced the PNC, and the PPP decided, when Sharma became mayor, that we have to find someone to counter, to frustrate, and to undermine Sharma Solomon in his efforts to succeed in making Linden a town that it ought to be. Sharma's interest is genuine. Sharma wants a legacy of being known as a leader who would have transformed the town. The PPP knows that, so they politically took someone from Linden that they know that will frustrate every effort of Sharma Solomon. I'm asking you this question, Apostle Nigel Eliakim. This is no longer constitutional politics. This has to be revolution. Because you are confronted by a regime that is saying to you that within your tenure, we will make you uncomfortable and you will never achieve what you intend to achieve, what should be your action thereafter?
The action thereafter should be to meet the decision of the PPP with equal or greater force,
Thank you,
which would
sir.
be to expel Gaspar. Not to entertain discussions, to expel him, because he was never constitutionally appointed to the post of town clerk. And even if he were, and his position and his conduct speak to him undermining the decisions of the council, he should be expelled. Because chapter 28:1, as people always talk about it, speaks clearly to what the role of the town clerk is. He's a clerk. You're not a councillor. And the position of any clerk is to take records or to take minutes or to record important decisions that are made and to execute them. You're a clerk. You're not a councillor. You're not a mayor. You're not a member of parliament. And so what I see is the town clerk, for example, whenever the PPP shows up here, he goes live to show what's happening to the minister. But when the mayor is on the ground, he doesn't go to show what the mayor is doing. And the mayor is not ensuring that this man is dealt with, because he has to be expelled. Listen, I know only one way to deal with cancer, and it's not to pat it on its head, it's not to feed it, it's to get rid of it.
It's to remove
it. Put it out. Burn it out. Do something.
Thank you.
Get it out. And this man has been inserted and is functioning in a cancerous manner. Because if the council is making a decision, and based on reports and what I'm seeing, they've made decisions and they've requested of the town clerk, and they don't have to request anything. As long as they make a decision, the council has to act on it. But he is not doing that. And they're continuing to highlight again the deficiencies in reference to his functionality, but they're not removing the person who's causing the problem. So if he's been inserted in Linden, then he can be ejected.
Not if he has been inserted in Linden.
I should say since he has been.
If it's subjunctive, he has been inserted. So I want to ask you this question before I move on to the next question, before we wrap up and get your closing remarks. So we're going to go to another question, and you will deal with that, and then we will get your closing remarks. I want to ask you a question before we go to that. Apostle Nigel Eliakim, would you say that within the context of the political situation and local government at Linden and across Guyana in PNC strongholds, as it relates to what is happening there, would you say in particular to Linden that local leaders are equally culpable in this miasma as our national leaders?
They are. They are, because they are bound apparently by party politics or by expectations to not, to a great extent, not to seem willing to overstep certain boundaries, as they call it. So they have to be constrained and guided, cautious in reference to their utterances, because they don't want to be criticizing certain people. But I would hope and pray that we have an ignition in the mind of our leaders to recognize that Linden is different, because Linden is being treated differently. And if we're being treated differently, then we have to have a different approach to leadership. And it has to be said across the board, you don't intend to be disrespectful as leaders, but you intend to represent the people who have put you there. This is important. And if people have put these people there, then they have to stand for the rights of the people. And they must act in a manner that speaks to them having courage, class, and power to show the world that we're not going to be intimidated by the PPP or any other P in this town right here, because we're suffering immensely, Norman. If I saw outside, it was thunder and lightning just now. If it rains tonight, within 20 minutes, I'll call you and show you what's happening. It will flood again. So this is not a case where you can play party politics now. You have to play defensive politics. And aggressive politics.
Defensive and aggressive politics. Defensive and aggressive politics. Apostle Nigel Eliakim here on Voice of the Diaspora. The world will listen to this as the days go by. And of course, thousands will listen to the brief clips that would be given. in relation to German figure, in relation to the local leaders, in relation to Lennox Gaspar and so on. But we have to move on because we're pressing for time. And my next question, before I get your closing remarks, Apostle Nigel Eliakim, the unfinished works at Linden. We know a promise of a new spanking new Mackenzie Sports Club, a spanking new state of the art synthetic track at Bay Rock, and of course the Bamia School, that millions and millions have been spent. Persons such as Shanghai and Hitson Jams, who are PPP surrogates, I'm not saying allegedly, who are PPP
Yeah.
surrogates, would have been given those contracts, have no experience at all, literally no experience at all in that area of expertise, but they were given um, that contract is released to Bamia School. Almost a year, and there's no realization of Obama's school when they promised that it would be ready in months. Talk to us about that before you give your closing remarks.
Thank you.
Shanghai and others.
Correct. Linden has been and is being used to defend the PPP's position when they're exposed in reference to discrimination against African descendants. It's one of the key areas. Because we're predominantly African, then they're going to say, well, look at the sports club. We're trying to develop Linden because we love Linden. They're not going to say that they took the Mackenzie Sports Club and have now renamed it without any meeting being held among us, the membership, the financial members. They've rebranded it as Mackenzie Stadium. Nobody had to vote. Nobody. They just decided to do that. They aren't going to say that they took it upon themselves to destroy the pavilion that a plaque states belongs to the members of the club. Destroy it. They're not going to say that they've shown their hand in that they can do whatever they want. They will not say either that at the Bayrock Stadium, as they call it, where this state of the art synthetic track is, can they tell us all now why, for inter-school competition, inter-house competition, they've told schools that to hold the inter-house meetings, they have to pay $80,000 to use that track.
Wow.
That's a community center now. That's a community track. It isn't owned by anybody but the people, according to what Ramson and those who have said. And it has no pavilion, no pavilion. It has no restroom facility. And they're telling schools, primary schools, that to host your event, and secondary schools, you have to pay somebody $80,000. There's no gate to prevent people from walking in and out and stuff like that. That's what's happening in Linden. And yet again, what do people do? Okay, we'll use Plan B. We'll go to Christianburg because we don't want to raise any complaints. We don't want to make any store buzzy, or people call it. And so it's evident that those who are cronies and, pardon me, but they call them butt lickers of the PPP, they are getting away with receiving, in their eyes, financial benefits at the peril of Lindeners. That's what's happening here. So they pick out some people and say, okay, if the UN say we're racist, then how can we give Shanghai a contract? And how do we have Kashif and his son getting contracts if that's the case? And how do we have this one here? We're not racist. Look, we have 10 black boys from Linden who have contracts. That's what they've been used for. It is not about developing Linden. It's about ensuring that you don't have, in their minds, the guilty hands to say, look, we caught you red-handed. That's what our people are being used for. It's tragic, it's insulting, and it's an embarrassment, to say the least.
It's
For
an
me,
embarrassment, to say
the
least.
people I knew were once Lindeners, and look at what they've become. Because no Lindeners in my eyes anymore.
Apostle Nigel Eliakim, your closing remarks, but before you go to that, wrap up in your closing remarks your position on the need for widespread protest in Guyana. I spoke to Dr. Hines and I spoke to our illustrious brother Rickford Burke, Mark Benshop, also powerful activist, and their views have been different. I think Mark and Rickford would have said it. Dr. David Hines is associated to protest. He comes from a powerful background, but he is an intellectual. He did not debunk protest, but he said perhaps, and I don't want to misquote him. I don't recall clearly what he said. The record is there, but he gave an impression, in my estimation, and to my knowledge and my memory, that the era of protest within the paradigms of oil and the world that we live in, that the era of protest may not be what it should be. In your view, is there a need for massive and widespread protests to bring an end to dictatorship in Guyana?
I greatly appreciate your question. I'm happy that you left it for last. As they would say, you saved the best for last.
Thank you.
If you observe what's happening in the UK, if you observe what happened in France, if you observe what's happening in Africa, it's obvious that anyone who's of the view that the era of protesting, vehemently protesting with excessive expressions of courage and passion, if you ever think that era is over, then you may be in a bubble somewhere and be quite unaware of what's happening around you in the world. The world, in many instances, in England, for example, leadership changed because people took to the streets and said, we're not having this anymore. In Kenya, I think it would have been, if I'm not mistaken, the young people said, not here. You're not doing this to us anymore. And there was immediate change within 1 month. Guyana must understand, Guyanese must understand that there is no historical record, none that I can ever cite, of there being peaceful, quiet, church boy-like approaches to dictators and they left. None. There's never been one. Slaves, as they were called, did not become free through negotiations and intellectual conversations. Granger was not allowed to have a peaceful day from 2018 to 2020. I don't understand why people believe that those who have come into office, as they call it, who were put into office and are 10 times worse than he is, should have anything less meted out to them. And so I would say, without any room for misunderstanding, Guyana needs a massive, continuous, widespread, nationwide shut down in terms of protest until the PPP, APNU AFC, any other C would sit down and tell the people nationally, we are prepared to act in your best interest. We swear to do so. Please give us a chance to fix this. Because if that doesn't happen, then the people will rule the nation through who they think should rule the nation. That should be Guyana's position right now. No, nothing else.
Apostle Nigel Eliakim here on Voice of the Diaspora. We did not expect any different. Outspoken, very clear, intelligent, and very concise in many ways in terms of giving us his views. Your closing remarks, Apostle Nigel Eliakim.
Let me close by first of all thanking you again for having this opportunity granted to me. You're among the very few who can make me jump down from a scaffold, run and get myself ready to be in a broadcast, to shut down my work just to be here with you because I understand the cause. I must close by informing, if I can, or reminding those who care to be reminded that this nation has been built by the hands and on the backs of very strong people. Guyana would not go anywhere if we have an environment of people who speak without acting. The culture that's being created now for our country is unhealthy and dangerous. We don't want to have a generation inherit the ability to speak without the courage to act. I would therefore implore those of us who are older to think about what comes behind us and who comes behind us, and let there be a legacy of courage, strength, resilience, and independent thinking for our children to inherit. With that said, thank you, Norman, and I always look forward to a new, or what I should say, a different Guyana. Thank you.
Apostle Nigel Eliakim, I recall in my closing remarks how we started out, and I recognize that an exceptional man and leader was birthed at Linden, because when we would have had a difference, you stood up and said, and you made it clear, I have no problems with you expressing your view, but I have to stand up because the person to whom you would have expressed that view against is my guest, and the onus is on me to defend my guest. And you did not stop there. You did not push me away. You did not relegate me. And when no other channel and station across the nation wanted to accept you because you were profound and powerful in your courage of conviction, within that paradigm of a difference, I reached out to you. And we have been here, and we will continue to be here. I salute you, I honor you, I respect you, and I hope that, as I wrote in my article today, that the Moses of Linden will rise. I know that the People's Parliament had begun as a powerful local organ that could transform into a political movement. And I hope that in the midst of the ineptitude of local leaders and national leaders, that a place is already etched out for you, that you can, not for political currency, but for the revolution that would free a people, that you can become a leader that stands up in an oil-rich country to make a difference. I appreciate you. I appreciate you on this program. I'm saying it. Thank you so much for being
Thank you, my brother.
on that of the diaspora tonight. And I hope that we will have another discourse in the near future.
Definitely.
Which rain?
And the back there from down kids, them house go back down, son.
Yeah.
The work is the people in the house. The inside the front house gun flood all like this, they're like this. But we gotta get off this before we push out the...
Which drain?
This is what people I tell show back you again.
Keep talking. Oh Lord. Oh yes, Rasta. Hear my voice, oh God, in my prayer. Preserve my life from fear of the enemies. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked. Who will Lord, from insurrection of workers of iniquity. Let them talk, keep them talking. We're gonna keep them talking, talk when they're talking. We've got a lot more coming, talk, keep them talking. Oh yes, I know. We're gonna keep them talking, talk when they're talking. We've got a lot more coming. Let them say what they wanna say. What they do or say can lead I astray. No, 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 no. Jah is I guide day by day. Oh, we Lord, and He's my help in every way. That's why I'm singing. Talk, keep them talking. We're gonna keep them talking. Talk when they're talking. We've got a lot more coming. Talk, keep them talking. Oh dark